is Matt Casalo with the RhinestoneWorld.com.
It's Richard Greaves with ScreenMaking.com.
This is Stacy Marshall with Printwear Magazine.
Brian Walker with RTP Apparel.
And you're listening to Two Regular Guys
Podcast. Hosted by Aaron Montgomery and Terry Combs.
Keep on listening.
All right. Well, welcome into the show. It is Friday, February 26, 2021. We're 2 months in, Aaron.
Wow.
I'm Terry Combs, and you can find me at terrycombs.com.
And I'm Aaron Montgomery, and you can find me over at oursuccessgroup.com. Today, Terry and I are going to be talking with Scott Ritter on business practices and techniques to help businesses grow. So most of our listeners know Scott from the work that he and his wife Margie do with the DAX shows, but he's also a longtime business management expert, and he's got some great stuff for us here today. In fact, he's even prepared we're giving it away. He's prepared a little PowerPoint presentation, and we might even get to see the fabled Eric Campbell today too. So
if we say his name 3 times, I believe he will appear.
Yeah. Now, and do we have to say do we say Eric or do we say his rapper name?
Oh, I think we have to say E-Rich.
Oh, okay.
That's once.
That's once. So just 2 more times now. So we've already made pissed off our producer, so that's great. So good morning to Cindy. Appreciate you being here, and Charles. Good morning. And Eric is going to be in the comments and maybe live here in a little bit. And good morning to Todd and Gusta from Sweden. And Shad, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here. And Christine, good morning. Aaron and Terry, happy Friday. Yes, happy Friday to you too as well, Christine. In fact, Christine has provided another 5 things. So we've got that coming up towards the end of the program here too. So thanks, Christine. Let's see here. Todd asked about summoning Eric. Do you have to say it in a mirror in the bathroom with the lights off?
I don't think so.
And then Brian's already trying
that would
to
bring
summon Eric.
That would bring evil Eric, I think.
Oh, he's rubbing his beard. Okay. All right. We're going to get way off track. We've got a great program to get to here with our good friend Scott Ritter, and we always have a lot of fun chatting with them, and so it'll be a fun discussion, but we're also going to learn a ton from Scott too. So Marianne said, finally got here on time. Good Friday morning. And Christine says, I like to write. I could come up with 5 things all day, most likely. Yeah, you definitely could do that. The pay is just not very good. So yeah. All right. Well, let's hit a couple of news items here real quick, Terry, before we get into obviously the dad joke upcoming as well. So just preparing everybody in advance for that. So hold on to your seats. But the news item for me, it's a little bit personal. At least it's close to home here. So as many of you know, my wife and I both recently became Success Principles certified trainers. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Success Principles, it's a book written by New York Times bestseller Jack Canfield. And it's a simple guide to help you transform your mindset to where you are, to where you want to be. Those of you that still aren't familiar with Jack Canfield, you probably recognize his name from the Chicken Soup for the Soul book. He's co-author of that whole series. In fact, I think they've sold over 1 billion of those books, is what I heard him say just the other day. But anyhow, the breaking news here, the news I wanted to share is that upcoming, there's going to be a workshop that my wife is putting on, and she's going to be presenting that on April 30th, 2021, called the Empowered Mindset Masterclass. And you can find more details over at weheart.biz/EMMC. That's Empowered Mindset Masterclass is what that stands for. Anyhow, this is the last weekend to get 50% off the workshop. And she's going to provide a full presentation with the number 1 success principle, taking 100% responsibility. And there'll be several worksheets and different style exercises to do, meditation and a yoga practice. So just all the tools that you need to empower yourself to kind of put the principles to work. And the workshop's going to be online on Zoom. She's limiting it to 30 people so she can kind of create a very great safe space. Everybody feels comfortable. Plus, give those folks a personalized experience. So I'm really proud of her, and I'm really excited to see her. This is her first real program like this. She's a vocational rehab counselor by trade, so she is fantastic at this kind of thing. But in this kind of format, this is newer for her. So she's really excited about it, and so if you want to check that out again, it's weheart.biz/EMMC. So that was the news that I had, but what else do you have out there, Terry?
And that's a little bit of rehab, I guess, when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. M&R Printing Equipment has announced the first annual, I don't know if that's proper terminology, first annual. You got to do it once and then before it becomes the annual. But the first annual 2021 Digital Squeegee Award competition, which is a year-long celebration of garment decorators who excel at hybrid printing using the DS4000 Digital Squeegee hybrid printing system. It's basically combining inkjet printing with automatic screen printing. The award contest is open to any printing company in the U.S. that produces hybrid prints using the M&R Digital Squeegee. Throughout 2021, M&R will present 2 awards per quarter in recognition of the best hybrid screen printing techniques by garment decorators, as decided by a panel of artwork judges. The 2 Digital Squeegee Awards each quarter will be the Digital Squeegee Innovators Award and Digital Squeegee Production Skills Award. So that's kind of a cool deal that M&R is doing with their users out there, and an opportunity, hopefully, for all of us to see some really cool decoration to really cool prints. And since we can't go peruse the Impressions Awards area, quite yet.
Yep.
But cool, Aaron, you've got a dad joke.
I do have a dad joke. Now, I already, Todd says, ugh, that kills me. Inaugural. There we go.
There you go.
Inaugural. So hopefully we did that right in our first year of the Reggies. Do we call it the first annual, or do we say?
I don't think we did, because that's kind of a pet peeve of mine also.
Okay, good. I wouldn't have really thought about it. So you guys are smarter than me, but hey. All right. So dad joke time. Yes. And I brought it up earlier already because I want everybody to kind of buckle in. This is a real groaner today, but I thought it was really actually funny. So here we go. Are you ready, Terry?
Ready.
All right. So I don't know if you knew this, but I have a Russian friend who's also a sound engineer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I also have a check 1 2 and a check 1 2.
I love it.
It takes a little bit, but Eric said before the show it was a slow burn, so I like that. So there you go. Enjoy the dad joke of the day.
Every time when I read this, I was thinking of Homer Simpson, because there's an episode where he was on tour with some band, and his job was the check 1 2, check 1 2.
I'd be great at that job. Go ahead.
All right. Hey, before we jump in, we want to thank everyone for checking out the Two Regular Guys podcast. We are always looking for new guests. If you or anyone you know would like to join us, go to calendly.com/2 regular guys, and give us your show ideas. If you are listening to the podcast version, we would appreciate you sharing with your friends so they can become regulators too. And we would love and appreciate you giving us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and now on Amazon Podcasts. If you are watching us live right now, please join in with your comments and questions. Reach out to your industry friends so they can join us too.
Yeah, excellent. And definitely looking forward to what we've got coming up here shortly with Scott. So now's the time to reach out and make sure that they know to come on over. And again, as Terry mentioned, we'd love to get those reviews on the podcast sides too. So even if you're just a normal live listener here and you're not catching us on the podcast side, just do us a favor, jump over there to one of those places like Spotify or Stitcher or Amazon Podcasts or wherever, and say, hey, I love the dad jokes, right? They tell the best dad jokes.
It's important to us. Guys, you can do that for us.
That's right. That's right. So, and Charles says, my father-in-law is Czech, so I'm going to have to tell him that one. So there we go. All right. And then we've even got Peter Walsh checking in from Kansas City this morning.
All
good
right.
to see you, Peter. So hopefully you're doing good. All right. Well, let's hear a quick word about a program that I've got going on over at our Success Group. And then we will get Scott in here and dig in.
Achieve any goal you want in just 12 months. Have you heard about the Success Tracker? My dad is going to tell you about it.
Thanks, Lewis. Success Tracker is the goal achievement resource that will provide you with a simple formula for achieving any specific goal you are willing to believe you can achieve. Not only do you get the formula, but we also provide support, motivation, and community, plus some fun swag along the way. This is what one of our current Success Tracker members has to say. Every day, I look at my certificate and carry my coin as a reminder that I am worthy and can do this. Today, I learned that I've surpassed my goal already, and I'm looking forward to seeing how much more I can surpass it before the end of the 12 months.
Go to OurSuccessGroup.com/ST.
That's right, Lewis. Visit OurSuccessGroup.com/ST for more information and to get started on your goal today.
Come be a part of the Our Success Group community.
We can't wait to be a part of the community with you. I always chuckle at the little end part there, and that may be the first time you guys have heard that. But if you couldn't hear what he says pizzazz. So a little 9-year-old really enjoying sitting in front of a microphone is always a lot of fun. All right. Well, so appreciate you guys checking that out. Again, OurSuccessGroup.com/ST. The price is going up on Monday. So if you really want to go after a 12-month goal and what kind of a formula, the support system, the accountability, and some fun swag, now's the time to get over there and check that out. So appreciate that. But Terry, we've got a guest that we need to get to here. Are you ready, sir? Up. For some reason, we are not hearing you, Terry. So I don't know if you hit a button.
That's because I had my mic on mute.
Oh, man. That was my opportunity to overdub you, too. Darn it.
Exactly right. Like I do to you.
All right. Well, good.
All right.
Well, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and bring Scott in and see if his mic's on. And
I'm having no problem whatsoever.
Everybody's a comedian.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Well, welcome in, Scott. So before we get started, for those of the folks that don't know who you are, which is probably not anybody here, but just in case there's a few people that don't know, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Oh, I got to do this now.
You get to intro yourself this time. Yeah,
I'm not even getting paid for this. Hey,
I know.
I'm Scott Ritter. I'm the president of the Decorated Apparel Expo. I've also been in the screen printing and embroidery business for over 40 years. And I've done it all. I was chief cook and bottle washer of the Northwind companies, several shops across northern Minnesota and Wisconsin. And here I am today.
There you go. That's a great intro. Terry, he told us that he had a presentation in the whole 9 yards. So, Scott, is that where we want to start?
Yeah, we may as well. I mean, not doing anything else at the moment.
Scott, I'm kind of at a loss because I'm usually the guy that's early in the week trying to gather 6, 8, 10 questions to ask, and I just didn't know what to do with myself this week. You got it all put together.
Sorry about that. I've always been one of those guys who just takes over everything. I mean, that's why nobody wants to work with me.
That's right. So Christine actually mentions join the club, Scott. Somehow Terry and Aaron get a lot of us to do stuff without pay. Not sure what their secret is, but I'd like to find out.
I do need to paint. I need to whitewash my fence this weekend if anybody'd like to come over.
Well, Christine, I do know what their secret is. It's the water and what they actually put into it.
Yeah. And it's barley and hops and yes. So, Scott, yeah. So let's do that. Eric, would you do us a favor and bring up that PowerPoint slide presentation that
there it is.
Scott has there? And Scott, we'll let you go here, and then I know we also want to get Eric in here. So just whenever you're ready, let's make it happen.
Yeah, give me about 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect.
Just kidding. Hey, I created a PowerPoint presentation for our discussion this morning here, and I thought, the topic was doing business better, and I figured, well, we've only got 45 minutes, so that seemed like a really good title, doing better business in just 45 minutes. And today, a couple things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, I want to talk about understanding our economy, and really 3 to 4 minutes. I promise this is not going to become a boring lecture or anything like that. Well, it will be a boring lecture, but it'll only be 3-4 minutes long anyway. Then I wanted to talk about some controls that your business needs now. A couple of things in marketing aids, and in the beginning, just for being wonderful people and hanging out and actually putting up with me, I have a free gift for everybody at the end.
Wow.
Wait,
I'm ready.
Do we
Okay.
reach under our seat and get that gift? Because did you go to everybody's house?
I did actually, yes. I had this buddy of mine in a red suit who helped me with that. Well, let's talk about our retail-based economy, which is one of my favorite things to say because I don't think there's an economist in the world who can say that with a straight face, because one of the earliest examples of a retail-based economy was actually introduced by a gentleman called Charles Ponzi, and for his efforts, he was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison. In a retail-based economy, the whole idea is that wealth is distributed by the purchases made and has nothing to do with creating wealth but on consumption. So the biggest question is, can you actually sustain a retail-based economy? And in theory, the answer is yes, you actually can, because the whole concept is that somebody comes up with an idea for something that they want that other people would want as well. They send it off to another economy to be produced, and they sell it back to us. They pay a royalty on it, but they don't just sell it back to us. They sell it back to other economies, so that basically the royalty is supposed to compensate for the amount of money that our economy is putting out. The problem is, of course, that this requires acceptance of the concept of intellectual property. And our biggest trading partner that we have manufacturing most things for us today doesn't believe in that. They will actually go and build a factory right alongside the one that they're building that doesn't pay a royalty, but is actually the one that's doing the majority of the supplying. So there is some problem inside of this retail-based economy theory. Now, in practice, a retail-based economy, we've got, and I apologize because for some reason my pointer doesn't show up in StreamYard for some reason, but we've got all this accumulated wealth of our economy denoted by the little cash bags. I think most people can relate to cash bags and they wish they had more of them.
Yep.
But at any rate, so a consumer has this wild idea that he wants a new appliance of some sort, although that looks like about a 1970s microwave, but it's a new appliance to him for some reason, maybe in the Ukraine.
It's the
And
hat.
at any rate, so our consumer has a certain amount of cash of his very own to deal with, and he's going to take some portion of that available cash. He's going to bring it to a store, and in exchange for his cash, he's going to get his new appliance that he wants. So what happens with the money? Well, the store keeps a percentage of it. That's their markup, and that gets returned back to the sum of wealth owned by the economy. But a much greater portion goes to wherever this particular product was manufactured, and not necessarily ever to come back is the problem. That's further complicated by the end result, because at the end of some amount of time, these days with an appliance, a life expectancy of 5 years versus the freezer I've got at the farm from the 1960s that's still chugging along that was made in America. But at any rate, the appliance ends up in a junkyard on the face of the moon, and our sum of wealth has been depleted by the amount that was not returned. And if you repeat the cycle enough times, eventually you've got a big problem with all the wealth being gone. Why is this important to screen printers? Well, let's talk about, where does wealth come from? Wealth is created when something that has absolutely no value is converted into something that does have value. Literally, wealth is created when you pull something out of the ground and make it into something new, which is the concept of manufacturing. So why is that important? Well, the good news is just about everybody listening to this podcast today is a manufacturer of some sort. Most of us are what's called finishers. We are the people who take somebody else's finished manufactured goods and we make them into something that's worth even more. In other words, hey, everybody out there who are listening, you guys are manufacturers. You are what adds the money back in and helps correct for this retail-based economy taking away the wealth. And admittedly, there are people out there who think that it's important for us to dispose of our wealth and spread it out across the world. And that comes back to Aaron's favorite quote that he likes to say about how a rising tide raises all ships. Our building wealth also builds wealth for everybody else. Throwing away wealth is not benefiting anybody. And so it is our jobs as the manufacturers. Everybody who's listening here today, it's up to you guys to do as good of a job as possible of creating wealth. So how do we do that? Well, there's 5 ways that I've listed here. And Aaron, Terry, you guys can comment with anything else that you want as far as, how we create wealth better. I mean, we can use cheaper products in our manufacturing. That seems to be the way of the world right now, particularly with where most things are being manufactured as far as how to create more wealth. We could charge more for the same thing, or some better opportunities in my mind is we can become more efficient at our producing. We can waste less, or we can market better. Now, it might seem strange that marketing better is in there, but I wanted to concentrate on the last three items: becoming more efficient, wasting less, and marketing better. These are the three that contribute to the overall wealth and sustainability. And marketing better actually helps keeping orders from going to companies who exercise the other two, making it cheaper or selling it for more. Those aren't really contributing to the wealth the way we are. So it behooves us to become more efficient, waste less, and do a better job of marketing. And to do that, we need some form of controls. And the big controls inside of our company are going to be the forms that we use to control our company. I mean, yeah, we can do a better job of controlling our employees. There's the old adage that having employees is just like raising children, but you can't spank the employees. However, at the same time, there are people who are trying to reverse that one and say you can spank the employees and not the children. That one I find a little odd. Okay. Also, every form that you use in your shop is a control for your production, to be able to streamline, to be able to make it more efficient, to be able to cut down on mistakes in particular. They speed production. Okay. And proper controls also help us to reduce waste. And the one last thing that I think a lot of people don't think about forms, that's the most important thing to think about, is that every form in your company needs to act as a checklist to remind you to get all of the pertinent information, first of all, and then to be able to disseminate it where it's needed. Because, come on, you haven't been in this business if at some point you didn't have to call a customer 5 times because you forgot to get some piece of information when they placed the order. Myself included, guys, and this is embarrassing when you have to call the customer and say, I forgot to ask you, what color ink do you want on those? Or what color shirts? If you have to ask those two, that's really embarrassing.
And blue is not an option.
Exactly.
Yeah, which shade of blue, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so from there, I wanted to take a look at some of the forms that we actually use inside of our shop today. And at this point, I want it to become kind of a group discussion instead of just me giving a narrative about the economy, because I figured that I didn't want you commenting on that, to be honest.
But I'm going to anyhow. How about that?
Good.
Scott?
Please.
Do
you want me to back up a slide?
Yeah, if you would, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. There we go. So one more.
Oh, one more.
One more, yeah.
Watch, it'll be one more after that, too.
Okay.
Right?
Oh, actually,
now we got
to
get rid of all the bullet points here.
Sorry.
No problem. This is what I enjoy.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what you came here for, to move slides.
Are we good here or more?
Yeah, this is perfect. Because, see, I think that this is a really great point that you make, that something we talk about quite a bit inside our success group is, to me, there's 3 levers, because I think you can get some of these things together. And those 3 levers are the one that you took off from before, that reducing cost. And we do the same thing where we talk about don't touch that lever, because what we think is reducing costs are really tough to calculate. We're really hard to understand that, yes, maybe we reduce our cost here, but what is that costing us in the long run that we can't see, right? So we want to do these other things where you got here, the becoming more efficient and wasting less, to me would be one single lever. And then marketing better or charging more is the real place to go to generate more wealth. And in my opinion, I think most decorators don't charge enough they don't value their products enough. So,
okay, anyhow. But I am going to attack you on that one, Aaron,
That's
because
I'm
using costs is a wonderful thing so long as it's done correctly. Using cheaper goods is the wrong way to do it. Producing more efficiently lowers your costs, and you're getting at that already.
Correct. Yeah. So we look at, like you said, using cheaper goods, those kinds of cost cutting that, again, on face value seem like it could work out just fine. But at the end of the day, is that, using the cheaper tool, like going and buying a cheap heat press, you're reducing your upfront cost, but you're probably actually spending more in ruined products and lost revenue due to poor customer reviews.
I agree.
So yes, I think we're on the same page. So anyhow, I just wanted to comment on that, because I think that is really important for people to understand that we are finishers. We do provide value, and like you said, we're all very important. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, when we talk about charging more, that really comes from, in my opinion, creating a greater value for what it is we're selling, and so the customer is more willing to pay more because they see that product having greater value.
Yeah, and to be honest, to put your comment and Aaron's together, one of the things that I have always said is the biggest death sentence you can deal to your company is choosing a name like discount screen printing, cheap embroidery, or something like that, because you draw all the wrong customers to yourself, and the name of your company itself tells people to look for problems in what they receive. You could produce the most wonderful order ever, and somebody's going to say, no, you did something wrong.
Yep.
Just because you're discount screen printer.
Yep, exactly. And yep, that they immediately have buyer's remorse before they even started. That's a great point, Scott. All right. So Terry Larkin says cheap is never good. And Christine says, I've written about this several times. I always call it do the math. Cheaper doesn't always mean that you're saving money in the long run. If you look at the entire process, you may find a cheap product causes production issues or stoppages, which increase the cost of production. So I think we're all on the same page here.
Yeah, except for Christine's comment covered my picture up, and they just couldn't see my. They didn't want to see.
They could see the top of your head nodding. So we were good.
That's the worst part.
Okay. All right. So let's we can move back.
I suppose you want me to move back to where I was now.
You just
you don't have to repeat everything you said
this.
on each of those.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do. Okay, so let's talk about an order form. An order form actually fulfills a lot more concepts than most people think of. First of all, it needs to act as a checklist. It reminds you to get all of the information that's required for the order. It also facilitates an understanding of what it is that we're doing between you and the customer. It tells me what the customer wants, and the customer can look at that on paper or on the electronic screen, whichever, and say, yes, that is what I want. We get the meeting of the minds. Also, an order form provides credibility. I've been at screen printers or embroiderers, a number of times because I've visited thousands of them at least hundreds of them across the country. My life isn't that long, no matter how gray the hair is getting. But, where they'll take out a scrap paper and quote me an order, or they'll actually write it up. I've seen them write up an order on a piece of scrap paper, and it's like, what are you thinking? I mean, this does not inspire confidence with your customer. And finally, the order form serves as a contract saying what you're going to do and what your customer's responsibilities are as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So I put on the next page, I just put together an order form that we can talk about.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. Yeah, I agree with all of those things. Like you said, it instills confidence. It gives you that checklist. All of these things, and I'm glad you also brought up the digital side of things, because I think more and more people are starting to find ways to reduce the paper content in the
Absolutely.
shop. Yeah. So
Scott, is this the same form that it will go out onto the production floor with the products?
Yes, and I'm going to qualify that later.
Okay.
So yes, a copy of this will go out onto the production floor, but there will be other things that we're going to talk about as well that need to go out on the production floor too.
Okay. I don't want to jump the gun, but can I tell you a little trick that I've done in the past? Because I go back in the day, I would go into production shops that were having efficiency issues, and one of the tricks that I would do, because things change on a production floor. What you needed last year, you may not need this year. So I would issue each department head a different color marker, a different color highlighter. And I would say everything that you used on this form in the art department, highlight in yellow. Everything that you used in the screen department, highlight in orange. Everything that you used in whatever, production, highlight on the form. Everything you used in the shipping department, highlight on the form. And then I take all those forms and start looking at all the things that were on those forms that nobody ever needed, nobody ever looked at. And you talk about kicking and screaming.
Yep.
When I said, okay, we don't need this anymore. We don't need this on the form anymore, because no one needs it in the process. And anyway, it's just kind of a neat little trick that you can do to eliminate some of the information that's traveling around the shop.
Very true. And we will talk about some of that as well here. And I'm also going to point out that the forms that I'm going to be showing here were many of them were created as early as the early 1980s inside of my Northwind companies and evolved over the years. And, since I'm not doing screen printing or embroidery anymore, obviously some of them need to evolve considerably more still, but the basis is still there. And there are some points I want to point out. And obviously some things will need to be added, some things will need to be subtracted, and there are going to be other things. And these are all paper-based forms that I'm showing. The electronic version, as somebody who's been a computer programmer since 1971, systems analysis is all about taking how we do it right now and converting it to the digital world. So we need to look at, how we did it traditionally to be able to convert it to how we do it electronically.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point.
So a couple of things I want to, go ahead.
Yeah, before we get there, though, I just wanted to ask this question that we got from Jay Bassell, regulator here. Will you set the expectations of prepayment on this order form?
Oh, will I ever, Jay? We'll talk about it. I don't have anything specific. Well, actually, if you can zoom in far enough, Eric, if you want to put this full screen for a second, you'll see that down in the bottom right-hand corner, there is a 50% deposit required on this particular form with balance due upon receipt. And that'll do, Eric. You can zip it back down if you want now. But, that was our requirement at the Northwind companies, is that, we literally did not offer credit to anybody in the entire time of our 20 some odd years of existence.
Yeah,
I realize the world has changed, but with credit cards as well, realistically, it's real easy to say, well, you just put that on your credit card. You got 30 days to pay. It's like you've given them credit.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point we're decorators. We're not banks.
Exactly.
And a lot of new businesses, they offer credit up front until that first time they get burned, and then
which doesn't take long.
Right.
Yep. Indeed.
I mean, all right, our company actually gave credit terms to some very large businesses, such as we had a local ski hill, and they took us back in the 1980s for $10,000 when they collapsed, and that would be the equivalent of about $30,000 today. That one nearly killed us, and it did take down the bank in town.
Wow.
Yeah. So at any rate, on the order form, some things that I wanted to point out, and unfortunately for some reason, my pointer doesn't show up on here. I'm sure nobody else is seeing this on the screen either. Yeah. But in the top, we've got, the information about my company, the information about the customer. This is the first portion of turning this into a contract. We've identified the parties. We don't normally think about it that way, but this is part of contract law, is the parties have to be identified, and we have to identify, what it is that we understand. So in creating a contract, we've done a sizable portion of that already. So on the rest of the order form, I've got some boxes for things like who sold this, when do we expect to deliver, what are the terms of the sale. I've got also, of course, the date that the order is placed, because the clock's got to start ticking at that point. Yeah. There's a well laid out section for how many shirts are we actually printing, or caps or whatever, the stock number, the brand, the description, and the sizes that are going to go into this, and the price each. As well as at the bottom, we've got 3 areas for you to be able to denote how the design is going to work and where. And finally, at the bottom, because a contract needs to be signed, we have a space for a signature to go in. And as Jay had already asked, well, how do you handle payment? Well, in my mind, anything, and people understand with custom goods. I mean, we ordered countertops for our new kitchen that are going to be in next week, and we had to pay 50% down. It'll be balanced on delivery. It's on our credit card. This is not uncommon. It's nothing you need to worry about, because with custom goods, that is the norm throughout all industries, at least until you get into certain major companies where they do expect credit anyway. Yeah. We did business with Kmart Corporation on they demanded 60-day terms, and they would take up to 120 easily. And that one was also a company we did business with for about a year and decided it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. And that's a good point too, Scott, that sometimes you look at those things and they look really good on paper, like, oh my gosh, I get to do business with Kmart or whoever. Yep. But at the end of the day, is that really the ideal job for you? Is that really the ideal partner for you? And like you said, if they're stringing you out for 120 days, that makes cash flow difficult. If they're difficult to work with and you're not making much profit margin, it's sometimes better to just part ways.
Well, one thing that regulators should probably be aware of is when you do business with these major corporations like Kmart, Walmart, et cetera, they expect to buy it from you for less than anybody. And, I mean, we've heard about Walmart, how they forced their suppliers into bankruptcy, but just by the fact that they have to get it for less than anybody, including the other big box stores. And then they demand credit and this, that, the other thing, until realistically, you don't have any profit left, just them. You have to be really on the ball in some amazing ways to do business with these big firms.
Oh, and don't forget, we get to send back anything we don't sell.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, we managed to get rid of the buyback clause when we dealt with Kmart, but that was a standard part of any contract that they wanted to do. And, we were able to get around it just because of who we were.
Yeah. Vic actually chimed in and says Walmart does force people into bankruptcy, sometimes by design.
Yeah, I'm not going to take political sides, but I do know that the Menards Corporation, my father-in-law, competed against them way back when they were first starting up in the late 70s. And he knew that part of their marketing policy was that they went into a market area and their objective was to take out 70% of the competition in the first 2 years, and then they would bring it into their normal prices, but they would lower prices until they did that.
Wow. Yeah. Yep. All right.
Not that I don't do business with Menards.
All right. Well, that's good to know. I did not. Let's see here. So just reading some of the other comments before we get into the next point here, Scott. Cindy says, I'm one of those that will write on a yellow tablet because the customer will change things several times while we are talking. Then I'll put on a work order or invoice.
It's a really good idea, but you have to make sure that you use that order form as your guide to make sure that you get everything on the checklist. And, then you can transfer it over. But, realistically, by the time you're done, you certainly want the customer to have a copy of this order form so that they've got an understanding of what they ordered and proof of it as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Good. All right. Well, what's next, Scott?
I don't know. Let's find out. Okay, so some of the things we were just talking about. Well, we didn't talk about the fact that the back side of your contract should have terms and conditions of the sale, so that it does become a complete contract. It has to be signed by the customer. And yeah, as Jay and the great conversation came up with Jay, you got to have deposits. I mean, there are probably people out there we all have the exception to the rule, but for the most part, the rule is we need 50% down balance on delivery.
Yeah.
Okay. So from there, another form that a lot of people don't have in their company, and with good reason for some of them, is the digitizing order. Now,
is this where we say E-rich, E-rich, E-rich?
No.
No, it's not.
You'll come in anyway.
What? Have I been summoned?
Your ears were burning, Eric.
You're like, put myself down at the bottom of the stack here.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Well, take me down there too. I mean, the rising tide raises only Eric and Terry.
There, I'm trying to be at the bottom.
Oh, come on. All right.
What is this? A race for mediocrity?
That's right.
Okay, the digitizing order form goes back into the early 1980s when I started embroidering, where basically your single head embroidery machine cost you the equivalent of $50,000 in today's dollars, and digitizing equipment would be actually was around $70,000 then. So what digitizing equipment cost was astronomical. So there were very few companies out there who could digitize your designs, and they had to keep incredibly busy at incredible prices in order to make money. With the digitizer that I used, Crests started at $100 in the 1980s. Jacketback started at $300, and one that I was quoted that we ended up not being able to do for the customer, I was quoted $1,200 for the digitizing.
Wow.
And that's 1980s dollars, everybody.
Absolutely.
So don't think about the $1,200 you're spending now.
Right. Right. So at any rate, you had a form that you used to send your order out to a digitizing firm at the time, which we kept in our company when we finally brought in-house digitizing in the actually around 1987, we finally got our first digitizing system in, which, that was great because we were probably the only company digitizing in the state of Minnesota at the time. But at any rate, we kept the form because it still allowed us to pass the information that we needed to the embroidery department. So after the order is all taken, the same person who took that order will sit down, and if it's an embroidery order that required digitizing, he would fill out a couple portions of this form with the customer's name. He'd give it a design name since it was a new design. Put down the color information for the digitizer, and he would send this off to the digitizing department. Also, he would tell them where this is going, but also you'll notice that it says this design should be made to be applied to, well, it's going to be for the garment crest this time, but hey, the customer wants caps sometime later down the road, and he wants full jacket backs, which is what Eric loves to hear.
Love it and hate it, depending on how much work I have to do. But yeah, sure.
And back then with the state of digitizing equipment, scaling up and down was a virtual impossibility. Anyway, 1 second here.
Totally.
Sorry about that, but but yeah, I mean, people would ask for that anyway. So I want to be able to put this on everything, but they didn't. That would attribute to the cost of what had to be done to make this work. So the digitizer would take this, and then he would put down what order he's got his threads in, some information about what is being done on each one, what kind of thread he's using. Also, the fabric is down there, that would have been sent to the digitizer so that he knows. The digitizer would send back saying, well, you'll need some cutaway or tearaway topping on this. The machine format is something that we asked for, and that most of that's pretty obsolete these days. And of course, the very bottom, payment and delivery, most people are doing it in-house. They're not sending this form out, so that becomes irrelevant. But Eric, take a look at that form. What would you like to see added to that to modernize this to today's market?
I don't know if it's necessarily about adding to it. I want to point something out, though. Number one is that, hey, look, digitizers, part of what you do, if you're the best kind of digitizer you can be, is give recommendations as to material usage and execution. If your digitizer doesn't run machines, what do they know? I hate to say that. If they've never run machines, they don't know how machines run. It's somebody who has software, who's essentially, got some graphic arts chops and can do some stuff. If they don't really know the materials, if they don't really know kind of the holistic idea of what embroidery is, they're going to have a hard time giving you much in the way of these suggestions. Plus, the other thing I'd love to see here is that look at the wealth of information you're giving to a digitizer. You're not just firing off a JPEG, which is what a lot of people want to do now. You fire off a JPEG, maybe you tell them a size, or maybe you tell them a garment. This sort of complete accounting for where something needs to go and what we expect out of it will make your digitizing better with probably any digitizer, no matter if it's outside or inside. So this kind of form is really valuable for anybody.
And back in the 1980s, your digitizer usually supplied this form to you to place your order. Excuse me a second again. Sorry about that. And as we were bringing things in-house, we decided, well, you know what? We've seen different forms from different digitizers. Some ask for some information, others for others. And all in all, we were seeing a lot of different forms and said, hey, we got to combine all this so that everybody gets all the information. And then a lot of digitizers started copying our form and saying, well, geez, we never thought of asking that.
It's like there's another service to offer, right? And I mean, I think, honestly, the big takeaway here, and we can talk about the modernization of the form, that one thing I can see that's a little different is now people sometimes want to get native file formats. If you have a software that you're using, telling the digitizer what software you use, especially if they are a multi-software digitizer, not all are, in fact, most aren't, they may be able to provide a native file format for you. If you guys don't know what that is, the working file, the file that you create is the one that's scalable. It's like vector versus raster. The working file, you can do some scaling, some editing. If you have text that's in a keyboardable, a typable font, you might be able to make some small changes yourself. That's something that is I would call new, even to my eyes. When I was first digitizing, you would never think of handing somebody your native file. That was not a thing that was done.
No, absolutely
at
not.
all. You would never do that, and now it's something that's much more common. So,
well, it wouldn't have done them any doggone good in my days, because even if they could bring it to another digitizer, I was one of the very few people operating on Larry Lawley's original Daisy system. So you weren't going to bring it to anybody who had the same system.
Deep cuts, guys, but trust me, no. There was not only would somebody not have the same system, likely the idea of a regular shop that's embroidering, running digitizing. In fact, that's the funny thing. Every time we talk about embroidery, and I love teaching digitizing, everybody knows this. And if you've seen me and Scott together, it's because I was at DAX teaching it. But the thing is, it is totally normal for an embroidery shop to run without digitizing in-house. It is totally normal for that to be the case, but now it's more likely you will have software, and I think most people probably should have software, and that it's possible. It doesn't mean you're going to digitize everything, and it's still, no matter who's doing that work, you have to collect complete information. Absolutely.
Exactly. And like I said, the form may be quite old, but it's still very valid to know that you have to have access to the information, and this is how you can pass it back and forth, whether you do it electronically or on paper.
You know what else is quite old, guys? The technology that actually runs an interlock sewing machine. Like that needle going up and down.
Say I was.
I'm not pointing fingers. This gray is not getting any lighter. It's only coming in more. Everybody's going there. But yeah, seriously, the technology behind embroidery, the interaction between the thread and the fabric and the needle and the stabilizer hasn't changed a whole lot since.
And don't get me going on how amazing of an invention the hook was.
Yeah.
Because we could talk about that for 30 minutes.
And no one else would want to hear it.
Exactly.
All right.
There were some great comments I'm going to point out, Eric, if you want to highlight some of those before we move on.
Sure. Who else do we want to bring in here? All right. You're going to call them out.
I'm sorry. So let's talk about. Let's go back just a hair. Well, you know what? While we're talking about digitizing, let's get Ramona here. When we were talking about the pricing of the digitizing and whatnot, she says, and today I get someone fussing over a $40 complex design.
Right.
So what I'm going to say to you guys too is, in our shop where we had developed kind of I would say a reputation for doing difficult work and artistic work, I never did left chest less than $100, and that was my entire career 20 years back. So, value is in the eye of your customer and how you establish yourself.
Yeah.
Well, I did a left crest under $100, Eric, but I was digitizing in the 1980s.
I was going to say that freezer that you have from the 60s is older than both of these guys. So.
That's true.
and I do wonder about that freezer. Are you sure that it's working? Because you live in Minnesota. It may not have worked for years, but everything's still frozen.
I was up at the farm 2 weeks ago, and I got cookies out of that freezer, and they were frozen solid, and the house wasn't.
All right. So another comment from Ramona. Just talking about the native files. She says that giving the native file bothers me because client will make changes and then come back and say, fix this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is definitely an issue. The native file can be a little dangerous, but I think the good thing is to keep good records of it. I would not necessarily give it to everybody. And in fact, I will tell you guys very, very briefly, I have a stock design that I just sold, and somebody tried to come to me and said, they absolutely have to have the native file to run on their machine. And I was like, machines don't take native files. No, you can't have it. And you definitely can't have it for $3. I was like, no, sorry. So yeah, there's nothing wrong also as a digitizer for saying, no, I don't want to give you the native file. You can make that choice. Just be upfront with it like everything else.
Yep. Yeah. I see Brian's got a comment about the CND file, and it's like, yeah, that form was created back when I was digitizing with CND files.
Yeah, that's true. So that sort of file is not there anymore, though. And then I have to swallow my words because that's a semi-native file that used to be run by machines.
It is
an old school Melco thing that is not done anymore. So yeah, absolutely true.
Yep.
And of course, this form's not about giving the design to the customer. This was about how your interchange inside the company.
Yeah. But that does tell you how much information people expected earlier to get, and it says now when you're just throwing out a JPEG and hoping for the best, it's much better if you have information about the job you intend to run on.
Well, we do have more. Whatever this is, we got a whole lot more of it.
All right,
so we should probably move on.
Well,
before
we do that, though, before we do that, I do want to go back and get Lenny's comment here because when we were talking about pricing, I think this is a good one to just bring up and make sure it's out there. He says, we've started selling customer service, not prices. Profits have gone up 25%. We also realized we aren't for everybody. And
totally fine.
And I think that's a hard realization for people to have, is that it's okay to say no. It's okay for people to go, well, I don't want to work with you if you're not going to drop your price. Okay.
That's an excellent one, and I want to respond to that because back in the heyday of our company in the Grand Rapids location, which was our headquarters, and that's where I was, I took great pride in the fact that we were in a town of 8,000 people and had 8 shops in town, mostly garage shops, and for the most part, on a 12-piece order, we could be as high as $2 higher than those garage shops, but we were still the ones getting the order because they knew we could do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
absolutely.
Great. That's a great point, Scott. All right, well, let's keep going then. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So the next form I wanted to talk about applies both to screen printers and to embroiders, and that's the art and digitizing approval form. Every order, and I've got question mark except reorders, because sometimes even with a reorder, you want to have this approved that you've got the right art again, but every order has to have an art approval form. And you need that form to prove that you've got the right design done correctly for the customer. So once again, this becomes a part of the contract. So this is also something that needs to get signed by your customer, either in person or electronically. And also one other thing that it acts at is, again, as a checklist, but this time more for the customer to check things than for you. So here's a look at the art and embroidery form that we used to have in our company. Every one of the artists would have this in all their native softwares, Corel, Arts and Letters, Express, Adobe. They'd have this as a template on their machine, and when they finished a piece of art, they would take that piece of art, copy, paste it into this form so that it fit inside of there, and then print that out on the color printer, which back in the 80s was $5 a copy, and zip that out so that the customer could see and sign this. And you can see that there's a bunch of stuff on here. I mean, first of all, it says, what's the name of the customer and who's ordering it, and probably not real relevant anymore whether it was manually drawn or done on the computer, but it does ask the customer to check things like, check to make sure, okay, we've got this down as being on the front of the garment or the back or the leg or the left crest or whatever. Customer check to make sure that is correct. Check the spelling. Check the size that it, whether it's either listing the dimensions or shown full size. Check to make sure this is the size you wanted. And then basically, if you're approving this, then go ahead and sign it. This form got changed dramatically, particularly the checklist. One time when we had a customer approve an order for a racquetball tournament, he said, yep, art looks great. Let's go with that. We started printing, and about 50 shirts into the run of 250, Dan said, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Well, sure enough, our artist had misspelled racquetball, and the customer didn't catch it. So we stopped. We ate the 50 shirts because we felt, we can put this out because they approved it, but there isn't going to be any good customer relations, and every person who got that shirt's going to be laughing at us. So we had to eat it. So one of the neat things is we did put that on the customer's responsibility, and we reminded them that it's there. Check the spelling. Make sure we did our job right.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. Yep, check the spelling. So before Greg Kitson joins us and said the concept of a reorder is a legacy that needs to go away. Every order gets treated as an original. Sales discounts for reorders are false economy and a huge profit drain.
I agree with him completely, with the exception of screen charges of, the original art creation charge, I should say, because you still have to put it on a screen. It's still a brand new order in every respect. The only discount there is not having to pay for new art creation, in my mind.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. Agree with that. So one other thing that I think that an art and form probably needs is also some sort of a sign off on the release of the artwork, like that they have rights to actually use that artwork. If you're creating this, obviously that's you own the rights to that, right? But I think that's something to probably discuss in this process here.
Yeah, for our company, the order form contained that information because this is an addendum to the contract. So it didn't need to have a terms section in our mind on the back. The terms are all on the order form itself. And the order form specifically said, if we create art for you, we may have charged you an art charge, but unless we specifically release that at the time of art creation, in other words, we'll charge you everything that it takes to create that art. Otherwise, we own the art, and you sure as heck don't own the screens. There are all kinds of people who would come in, well, I paid a screen charge. I own the screens, so I can take the physical screens to your competitor down the street. It's like, no, that screen costs more than we charge you just for the frame.
Yeah, I guess
I don't like you very much. I'd like to have my screen, please.
Yeah. It happens to every screen printer at some point.
Exactly.
Wow. So, but the other thing that I think, you're kind of looking at is there is a lot more people that, can do the design work themselves, right? Or think they can or whatever.
I was about to think they can.
Or they got it off the internet or whatever.
Yeah.
And, so somebody comes to you and says, here's my Harley Davidson logo that I want to put on this shirt. And, again, we could get into a long conversation. We already had a long conversation not too long ago with Gordon Firemark about copyright and all that other stuff. But I think you could also have some sort of a sign off in that regard, right? That they have rights to this artwork. If it's customer supplied.
Yeah, if it's customer supplied, I mean, realistically, you're not doing art creation. You're merely converting it over to your use. And, the odds are they're not going to ask you for that art back, and you can't say, hey, that art that you gave to me is now mine. It doesn't work that way. And probably should be outlined in the terms of your contract that, art you created is yours. Art you brought in? Yeah, that's that. Or excuse me. art you created as a company belongs to the company, and art you as the customer created belong to you.
Yeah, that's great. Great point. Thanks, Scott. Cool. Valerie says, I hate the people that try to tell you up front they have a small order, but but will order more in the future.
You remember the joke about the three biggest lies?
Tell us again, Scott.
Well, the last one, obviously, which is the punchline, can't be said in public. But the first one is I'll pay you back tomorrow, and the second one is the check's in the mail. And
Okay. We got that one. Yep,
it's gonna be the biggest decorating lie for sure. I love it. It's like the best thing ever is when someone walks in and says, "I have a great idea for a clothing line."
Exactly.
Oh like, no! Get that money up front.
I have the greatest idea for a T-shirt ever. That translates to samples, I don't have any money.
Different colors for each one, different art for each one.
And you and me are going to make $1 million.
That's right. And I've never run across a screen printer or embroiderer who's been in business for longer than 3 months who hasn't encountered that.
Absolutely. Exactly. Every time.
I always say that in my screen printing classes. This person will walk in your door.
I have the best idea for what to put on a T-shirt. Everyone does, and they're all wrong.
I love it. All right, Scott. So what's next?
That's a really good question. We should take a look. The next one actually is something that we got from Charlie Taub, I believe, some years ago. So I got to give credit where credit's due, and that's the strike-off specifications sheet. And I'm going to show you the one for screen printing. There's also one that we used for embroidery that's a little bit different, but it lists all the information that's necessary to repeat an order with exact results. So it looks like this, and basically this is a sheet that allows you to put down all the parameters that it took to create the job so that the next time that the customer places his reorder, you'll have exactly the information to do so in front of you. You'll have exactly which ink you used, what screen mesh you used. If you want to get down to the minutiae, it has spaces for you to be able to put in the screen tension for every screen, the flash times, the squeegee you used on your automatic or whatever. You can fill in as much or as little of this form as you need, but the whole idea is that as you create this job at the press or at the embroidery machine for the very first time, you jot in all the information, you do a strike off. In other words, you print this onto a Pellon or you sew it out on a piece of fabric, and you staple this sheet to that Pellon or to the sew out, and you file it away physically in a drawer, so that, and hopefully by number, so that you've got all your orders numbered, so that you can just go to the file cabinet, look up number 25761, pull that out, and it's like, oh, here's the reorder I'm doing today. It looks like it matches the order form, and boom, I can set up my press now so that I don't have a slightly different shade of blue that the customer is going to complain about later. I don't have less of the blue because I used a finer mesh. All the things that are important here for duplicating that as exactly as possible to the last time that he got the job done.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think it needs a whole lot more comment really about that, other than the fact that this is something you definitely need in your shop.
Yep. I mean, we even do that with our direct-to-garment type stuff as well. You set up the size of the artwork in the garment creator or whatever, and how far down and all the other stuff. And oh yeah, I want another one of those. Okay, perfect. So you just go back to that sheet. And
if you're that person who thinks, oh, I'll remember that, you won't. I'll just tell you now.
Yep, absolutely.
So your customers
where that came from. Just like most of these things, this all came from necessity. Our little form came from that very same thing where, oh yeah, I'll remember that. Crap. What did we do?
We changed something.
The customers always believe exactly. Like the last order they had with you is the last order you ever did.
Exactly.
They will come in 4 years down the road and go, remember that last time what we did? Do that again. Yep. And as much as that sounds ridiculous, especially if you're doing this digitally, the great thing is you can sound like you have superpowers when you go, yeah, here's the shirt that was on. This is the colors we used. This is how far down it was. And you look like you are really on top of it. And honestly, you are. So this is good information to have. I mean, canonical sample
on top of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Have that and look like you know everything at the drop of a hat. It doesn't make you look worse. It looks more professionalism all the way across the board.
Cool.
Well, for you Trekkies, you can't have Commander Data sitting there at your order desk.
I love that. All right. So Scott, is there more? We've got a question from Gusta. So if you want to get to
Let's start with the question.
Okay. So Gusta says, best way to handle an order like embroidery on a hat, screen printed T-shirts, and sublimated mugs to the same customer. How would you deal with something multi decoration.
Absolutely. That was something that we encountered all the time in our company. And if there are different processes, I mean, for instance, if you're dealing with a left crest and you're putting it on 3 different items, but it's going to be left crest on every one of them, that's fine. That's all part of one order. But we would make 3 separate orders, one for the mugs, one for the hats, one for the shirts. Now, mind you, if we had quantity discounts involved that were applicable, we gave them to you. You can't obviously print, the left crest and the caps from the same screen, but you can embroider them. If Eric's really, really good, then you can embroider them from the same digitized design, and even somewhat from the machine being set up the same. Although it's usually easier to download a new design into the machine than change it over to caps at a moment's notice. Incidentally, most embroiderers will do caps as a run, where they take caps all day, then set the machine back up instead of switching back and forth and back and forth. It's a whole lot better to have certain days of the week where you do caps or a machine dedicated to them.
Absolutely, 100%.
All right, good. So 3 separate order forms is the way to go.
That was our policy, is 3 separate order forms, because that way you're not denoting, well, do this on the caps, do this on the crest, do this. No. Denotation is wrong. They are 3 separate orders. Yes, financially you can treat them as a single, but they have to be on 3 different forms, either electronically or paper.
Yeah. And I would note on those forms 1 of 3, 2 of 3, 3 of 3, so that you knew there was more to this order.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because there is some bringing it all back together to deliver to the client.
Exactly.
Right. I don't think you'd want to if you got the embroidery done before you had the screen print done, or vice versa. I don't think you'd want to deliver the embroidery and then have them come back and get the screen print or something like that.
Right. I mean, you can ship separately if you're shipping them, but the rest of it,
yeah.
well, let's face it, the customers like it all in one big box anyway, if they can.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they want to process it, deal with it all at the same time, unless something's back ordered that they want to go ahead and get the rest of the order.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, I wanted to work on Aaron's comment about, I remember how this, that, and the other thing worked. That is one of the biggest problems that people have in the industry, is the fact that they often rely on memory. That's why a unique form that we created in the Northwind companies, and I'm sure somebody else created it too, but we had this as a brainchild, sat down, brainstormed this all out, was the Job Master Checklist.
Cool.
Now, the Job Master Checklist was a form that followed an order from the moment the order was placed until it actually shipped outside of the shop. And it allowed the press operator, embroidery operator to check to make sure the setup, to make sure everything is correct. It required every person involved in the process to take ownership in the process. And most people who look at this form, they say, well, that's just for those giant shops that are running, 15 automatics and this, that. No, because I found that the greatest value this form had to my company was in orders that I did myself. Because if I actually got out on the production floor and did an order myself, the odds are that this is an order that I took, that I did it as some sort of a favor to somebody. Like, for instance, they're having a hockey tournament on a Saturday, and I said, look, if you run out of shirts, I'll go into the shop and I'll print more, in which case that was going to be me. I wasn't going to be sending somebody else in. So I would go in, I would probably have the press, set up on Friday night, so that it was ready to go if they placed their reorder expecting it, so that I could just run in and start feeding shirts. But at any rate, it was incredibly important for me, because as the person who took the order, you will usually talk about navy shirts and purple shirts and green shirts before they actually settle on a color, and in your mind, you may remember the first one that they ordered and not the fact they eventually settled on a different color. So the Job Master Checklist is a tiny little form that just plain says check everything twice. So on this form, we have the information about the customer account, the job number, the date. All right. And this one's the embroidery one versus the screen print one. But here it goes to the digitizing department, and the digitizer puts in, what color, what thread weight, if different than 40, goes on to every single one. So the color order is on this form. He has to denote, was the sew-out approved by the customer? Did you get that signed art approval form with the sew-out stapled to it and the customer signature on it? Check, because it can't leave that department until that check mark is there and the digitizer who handled it, or the director of the digitizing department, has signed off on it. If the machine operator gets it and the signature isn't there, it goes straight back. It doesn't matter. You wasted some time. You're making sure that it's correct, because the biggest waste you can have in production is speeding right through production and doing it wrong.
Right. And the further away it gets from that mistake, the less chance of somebody catching it, because they assume, well, they must have checked this,
Exactly.
Which means anytime there's a change, everybody has to sign it. You have to, if you make a change, you sign it. And that's
Exactly.
and that makes that person go, well, let me double check. Let me just make sure this is right.
Absolutely. So once it's signed by the digitizing department, it goes over to the embroiderer, and basically somebody will have laid out this order as far as how many shirts, what sizes, etc. Well, the first thing that it asks the person who's actually going to sew this order is, did you check to make sure they laid out the right brand of shirts for you, the right sizes? Did you check to make sure it's the color that matches the order form? Did you check the thread colors that the digitizer gave you, or both on the order, on the strike-off form, and on the checklist here as well? They should all match. Yep. Finally, do you understand where this is going? It's going on a left crest. It's going on a hat. It's going on the sleeve. And after you've done the first run, here's where this form gets a little bit more complicated. It says, is the first run inspected? Well, in our shop, the policy was you ran that first run of shirts through the 4-head, 6-head, 12-head machine. You stopped, and somebody else, even if it's just the guy operating the machine next to you, comes over, checks through it, and says, yep, this looks like the design that's on the order form, and he has to sign for you, and then the machine operator has to sign it as well. So both of you had to take responsibility for it. It only took an extra 3-4 minutes for somebody else to stop what they were doing, come take a look, and make sure that order is correct. Finally, when this gets all done, whoever's packing this, and if it's a one-man shop, this is the same person doing all of it, except for, being the additional person. And so you're checking, and you're going to say, well, did you recount the orders when you're all done to make sure they're still all there? If there were any defectives, were they replaced or were they shipped short? How does your order system and contract work? Because, some people have a ship short and will just deduct how many shirts you got from the actual order as far as what you pay for. Others say, well, yeah, we got to replace it, and then we got to redo them. Hopefully we've got shirts on the rack so we don't have to set up a second time. Did you put the packing list in the box before you sealed it? And then the person who signed this, who did this, has to sign off on it.
That's great.
And that finishes out the order. At least that's the way it worked in the Northwind shop. And yeah, these are paper forms. Some of it looks like an additional hassle, but, there is no greater hassle than replacing, thousands of dollars of order because you did something wrong that, would have taken even 15 minutes to correct. That's 15 minutes well spent.
Yeah.
Scott, and you mentioned a couple of times a one-man shop, and I always tell people that come to my classes when it's, it's one person or a couple maybe that's starting a new business. I always tell them, start with these practices, with the assumption that someday you're probably going to have employees, but start these systems correctly from day one, and then it's easy to add on employees and have employees understand what's going on in the whole process.
Yeah. Well, and even if you don't plan on even having, I've encountered people that say, oh, I'm just not going to have employees. Well, you still have all of these checks where you don't have to try to keep all of this information in your head. Right. You have all these checks for yourself that then you can, focus on growing your business, doing the things you need to do instead of each minute detail of every order that you got to get right. Because, I like what Scott said about the fact that even if you're spending an extra 5, 10, 15 minutes on this, it's worth its weight in gold in not having to replace that. Plus, you don't factor in the cost of that lost trust that your customer now has in you, right? So you can't put a price tag on that thing. You can say, oh yeah, it cost me $5,000 to replace shirts, but how much did you lose in potential trust in future business?
Right. Absolutely. And as I was saying, Aaron, this is the form that saved my bacon so many times, because any time that I actually did an order myself, whether it was in the early days or, like I said, just because I went into the shop to run something special for somebody because we were shorthanded or whatever, if I took the order, I would usually find that I was remembering something wrong. And this form is the one that said, oh, Scott, check this again. Oh, geez, look at that. The one-man shop is the one who needs this the most.
And if you don't have these type of forms in your one-man shop, the checklist that you'll be going through will be at 3 a.m. when your eyes pop open and say, did he say Navy shirts?
Been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
They misprinted T-shirt, right?
That's right.
Printed on the wrong color. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, great. Scott, this has been awesome.
Do we have a couple more minutes, I hope?
We do. I was going to say, is there more? Could there be
more?
There
is, as a matter of fact. At this point, I think I'm going to be asking you to take over here, because the next thing I want to talk about becomes promoting yourself. And I noticed on Tuesday you sent out an email about this, even though this PowerPoint was actually created 2 weeks ago, about the marketing calendar, which was the most important sales tool in our company. I'm going to ask you, Aaron, to take and give us your impression of a marketing calendar, and then I'm guessing what you use it for and what I use it for could be two different things. So you start, please.
Well, from a marketing calendar perspective, I like to think about this as, again, we have ideas about what we want to talk about. Like Terry said, the weirdest times, 3 a.m., right? So if I get up and I put in that post or marketing piece and I start building that at 3 a.m. and I send it, nobody's going to see it, right? But so I don't have the time to basically, every day go, okay, what am I going to come up with today and create? So for me, it's all about let's get content, let's get ideas, let's get information building. And then, so like right now you should be talking about or getting ready to talk about St. Patrick's Day, for example. But what happens to us if we don't have a marketing calendar, what happens to us is we wake up on, March 15th and go, oh crap, I forgot to promote the St. Patrick's Day stuff that I could be doing or whatever. So I guess to me, that's what a marketing calendar works for, is kind of keeps me on track, keeps me ahead of the game, allows me to schedule when I have time and can focus on that and that type of thing.
And there are so many facets to a marketing calendar. So I'm going to ask anybody else, anything else that you guys do with your marketing calendar?
Well, I kind of like Aaron. I like to schedule out for the whole year and kind of think about. And here's an example also that when I talk to people is talking about promoting hoodies, and they're like, well, I don't need to promote hoodies in November because I'm already selling hoodies. Well, you have that completely backwards. People are in the market for hoodies in November. That's why you should be promoting them. So that's just kind of an add-on to that.
Yeah. And I guess, go ahead.
No, you go ahead first, Aaron.
Okay. Well, so the other thing, and I guess you get to your second bullet point, I'm hoping I'm not stealing your thunder here, is that when you do look at your marketing calendar, the other thing is to tie back your metrics to it, to understand what worked and what didn't work. So there's something to be said there. So Eric, your turn, and then we'll let Scott tell us.
The other kind of part of the marketing calendar we used to implement was looking at previous orders from existing customers and events that were local. So some of this isn't just the St. Patrick's Day stuff like that. It's that we have a certain category of events that are all happening at the same time locally, or we would look back at our existing customers who have bought with us previously and say, if I haven't heard from these customers, I'm going to do direct contact with them as part of the schedule.
Yeah. And that actually was the main thrust that we used for our marketing calendar. I mean, yes, that was all added on, but yeah, the big thing is we had salespeople who went out to our larger clients, and they would keep sales logs, and each sales log was there were 5 sections on each sales log. I didn't include a sales log in here because we just would have run into too much time. But at any rate, every time that a salesperson went out to see a customer, he would write in when he got there, when he left, what they talked about. Did he service an order? Did he take an order? Did he deliver an order? And just a little spot for notes about what they talked about. And what we were always finding was, you'd go into a customer and he'd say, geez, I didn't even think about it at the time, but, our group, the JCs, just ordered shirts for this fun run coming up. And, geez, I should have told them to go down and see you guys. Well, you know what? What you do is you take your marketing calendar, whether it's paper or these days we've got one on our phone, and you go to this week next year and you say, well, this is the week that they're going to have this need for t-shirts. You go back 2 weeks, and that's when you contact the customer and say, I remember last year you and I were talking about how you're going to have this fun run coming up in a little bit, and I've been thinking about ideas all year long just for you about what you should do, and I think you should try this. You know what? The odds are really good you're going to walk out of the door with the order before they even consider sending it out to bids to anybody else. You have basically performed a preemptive strike, and we got lots of orders and built lots of clientele that way because we just plain used our marketing calendar as a future calendar to say, hey, there's an event coming up. Let's call them before they have to call us.
That's awesome.
Well, Scott, most of us are not working with professional buyers, which means that it's our job to go in there and remind them. Can I tell you a real quick trick
Please.
that I used to do? On my price sheet, it says we hold your screens for 90 days. Well, in reality, those screens are probably being reclaimed as you were pulling out of my parking lot.
Absolutely.
But at 80 days, I could call you, and I didn't have to call you to say, hey, do you want to buy T-shirts? I call you and say, hey, we keep your screens for 90 days. It's coming up next week. I just wanted to give you a call and make sure that you have all the shirts you need.
Dang, that's what I never did.
It was surprising how many times people would say, we were talking about that. We were talking about getting more shirts, but nobody picked up the phone. So by me saying, I keep your screens for 90 days, it was just an opportunity to call and help them, opportunity to solve a problem for them.
Yeah.
That just by picking up the phone.
On our marketing calendar, we would always call to ask how your order was in 30 days because we found that was an optimum time for them to say, we should have ordered more of. And it's like, we can do that.
Yep. And you know why people don't do that? Because they don't want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
They're afraid. And guess what? If they have something bad to tell you, that's a good thing, because then you can solve it for all the other customers.
Yeah.
But there's an old salesman's adage that I have lived my entire professional life by, Terry. And I know I've told both of you guys, and probably Eric as well, this several times, but I'm going to say it again because there's probably somebody listening who hasn't heard this. But I think it was Zig Ziglar said that successful salespeople are successful because they do the things that unsuccessful salespeople don't want to do. And realistically, keep that in mind, because it has to do with so much more than just selling things. But any goal you've got in life is that, there's always something that's uncomfortable that you have to do. But once you get past it, that's your key to success. So it's the best way to motivate yourself to actually do the things you didn't want to do, because then you will be successful. And that goes for scheduling the next show, expanding, putting in another branch in your system, adding another salesperson. If the time is there, no matter how painful it might be, if it's going to pay off in the end, you got to bite the bullet and do it.
Yeah, that's great.
In our household, like my wife and I always say, I was like, man, I really don't want to do this. That's got to be the right thing to do. that's actually the litmus test. We're like, man, I don't feel like starting this project. It's the perfect project for right now.
Well, I've got like 2 more slides to go through, and they're both going to be pretty brief here. So I'm going to do that because I know we got to be wrapping up.
Yeah.
So we talked about a lot of forms here today. Well, I mentioned at the beginning there would be a free gift involved. And the forms that we've talked about, and your forms, whether they're electronic or paper-based, are the biggest control to help keep your business running efficiently. And back in the early 1990s, my old company, SMR Software, developed the SMR Forms Kit based on the forms that you've seen during this presentation. It was a collection of about 45 forms on a CD, along with HTML instructions, etc. And of course, it had a little server and all like that would bring up the forms for you. But at any rate, those are the forms that we've used during this presentation today. And I know some of the information is out of date, but a whole lot of it's still awfully useful to people. And it's things that you can build on. So what I've done is I've got those forms sitting at our website right now for everybody here to download, and an HTML directory that has instructions for every one of the forms and how they relate to each other. And Eric, I think I gave you the link earlier so that you can post it in the comments, because you can't click on my slide. But if you go to daxshow.com/forms.zip, you can download that collection of 45 forms. They're in CorelDRAW format. I think they're CorelDRAW 3, because we made this in the 90s and wanted to make sure it's forward compatible forever. They will work in any version of CorelDRAW you've got. I guarantee nobody out there has CorelDRAW 3 anymore.
That could be a challenge. How old is your version of CorelDRAW? Yeah. All right, so daxshows.com/forms.zip for any of you that are catching the podcast version of this. Again, daxshow.com. I think I said DAX Shows last time. I'm sorry. DAX Show, so DAXSHOW.com/forms.zip. .zip.
.zip.
.zip. There we go.
While
The dot
you're
is
there,
important.
Yes.
While you're there, take that forms.zip off and look at all the stuff that the DAX Show has to offer, because that's coming up, guys.
Yeah,
it is.
That. Cool. Okay. What else, Scott? I mean, that is fantastic. Amazing. Thank you for the gift.
Well, I appreciate that. One other thing I'm going to mention, I gave Eric the link for this too, but I do have a novel on Amazon, just like Terry does. And on Kindle, that novel is available for free this weekend as well, Friday through Sunday. And I just thought we'd throw up the link there for anybody who wants to see what maladies are running around inside of my head when I'm not talking to everybody. And at which point, you'll probably never have me on this show again. But at any rate, yeah, that particular novel is available free on Amazon for anybody who's finding themselves twiddling their thumbs this weekend.
Sounds
Fantastic.
good.
I will definitely go and download that.
Let me.
I got it for you. No worries.
You got it right there, Eric? Okay.
Yeah, for some reason, one of my link banners is gone that I thought was there, but here we go, guys. In the comments, you're going to find that right now. I've got that link to Scott's novel, which you definitely should check out. And I'll go ahead and throw this up on the banner. You've got it up there using the comments.
There you go.
So that is at Amazon.com. So go ahead and check out the link. If you're somebody who listening to the podcast, please go check it out on the forums. It's a little harder to read that one off as you type it in, but check it out and we'll get it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Ramona's got a question as well that probably warrants answering here real quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are doing the seminars virtually this year. There will be a limited number of intimate small workshops that we have not completely finished our schedule on at the actual shows. But the whole idea being we don't want to shove a bunch of people into a room and crowd them in there. So the seminars went virtual this year. The small, more personal, more hands-on workshops, those will continue, a limited number of those at each show.
Yeah. But speaking of the virtual shows, though, Scott, I mean, this is really exciting, and they're coming up here pretty soon. So again, we want people to get over to daxshow.com and check that out. But I love the fact that we're also able to do this virtually because of the fact that people can, it's great to obviously get there and be in Eric's class and actually see him live and do all that other stuff. But at the same time, people that maybe couldn't make it to the show for whatever reason, they can sign up. I know there's some additional speakers that maybe aren't normal DAX speakers, which I think came from this virtual format as well. So I'm super excited about this.
Yeah, I am too. There's plenty of people who have signed up for the seminars already who are from well outside of our normal market area, which I guess I've always just attributed to the fact that, I believe we have the best educational program in the industry, and there's a bunch of people who are jumping on it to be able to get the premium education that they want.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if they're not living in the Midwest.
Exactly.
Yeah,
if you can come to the Midwest, still come to the Midwest and see us. We'll be out there coming up a little later in the year than we had initially anticipated, but we'll be there, right, Scott?
I will be.
Okay. Well, I will be too, as long as I'm still invited. Perfect.
I've got your money. You're invited now.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, you'd be invited one way or the other.
No.
And I'll say, if you haven't had the chance to go to DAX shows, go do those virtual seminars. You'll get a taste of just how good that education is. And I can say that having been on the shows for so long, it's like, and I'm fairly new in the entire industry with being in the shows. The people who I've met teaching are engaged and awesome, and you cannot get better than that track. So go check it out for sure. See what's there, and the fact that you can go now virtually and it's all there for you, no matter where you're from, invaluable. So check it out, DAX Show.
One of the other neat things, Eric, about the virtual shows is that we're setting up the software so that you can catch it live, and then you can catch it up to 3 times thereafter and up until the end of June.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I can't tell you how many times somebody has asked me, and that's why what you guys also don't know is that you get handouts, you get other information as well as just the attendance. It's like then the idea that you can go back and repeat it a couple times, that's incredible. So it's stuff that we couldn't do before we were doing it like that.
Cool.
There are advantages both ways, obviously.
Yep. True. Exactly. Gotta making lemonade out of lemons here. So, all right. Well, Scott, anything that we missed here today?
Well, let's see. We didn't talk about how cold it is. We didn't talk about the weather. I think as far as the things we actually set out to do, I think we've done it.
Yeah, I think it's been great. This has been great information. We've had great feedback from folks already. So, Scott, thank you for the time. Thank you so much for the free gifts. So, regulators, make sure that you're getting in there and head over to daxshow.com and tell Scott how appreciative you are of this free gift and all the opportunities that we get to learn and grow as an industry together.
It's all about being in this together.
Yep, indeed.
Or for those of you who watch Canadian TV, I guess I'll just say, well, we're all in this together. I'm pulling for you.
We couldn't leave without the perfect Scott voiceover. So, Scott, thank you so much for your time. We'll look forward to seeing you soon and hopefully seeing you face to face very soon too.
Sounds great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Awesome.
Very good.
All right. Well, Eric, we're going to boot you out of here too, and we'll wrap.
That's what I was going to say. Let me drop out and let you guys finish the show.
Yeah. Let's do that. Man, Terry, great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
Love talking to Scott. Always have a blast, and that free gift and everything else. So
he was horribly incorrect about being 45 minutes, though.
we kind
That's
of
probably our fault, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that may be more on us than him, but hey. All right. Well, let's do this, Terry. Let's do 5 things real quick because we got a great one from Christine here, and then we'll wrap this up because I got another show to run to here.
You do indeed. A couple of minutes. Are you
We're good.
going to do those?
All right. It's 5 things. And again, this is from Christine Shreve. So make sure you're checking her out at christineshreve.com and all the stuff that she's doing with the Women Plus Business or Women and Business podcast. Sorry, I messed that up. But here are 5 things that she learned from the Women in Business podcast. Number 1, there is no one story for all women. These stories that women on the show have told are different as the women themselves. Just like there's no single story that sums up the male experience, there's no single story that women tell. So that's the first thing that she learned. The second thing, many women are braver than they know. Women have shared very personal stories on the show. I've also seen several women who were a bit nervous about doing the show shine when the moment came. It's been amazing. That's fantastic. That's great to hear. Number 3, sharing painful experiences can help others understand. So some of the stories that have been told were painful and hard to discuss. The women telling them were willing to share in order to help others learn from what had happened to them. That's a great one. Number 4, sorry. Number 4, I like asking questions more than I like answering them. This is great. I already knew this in theory, but the show has driven this home. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm reading off the wrong one. Okay, back to, wow, I've really messed this up. So I like asking questions more than I like answering them is number 4. Those of you who know me know I talk a lot. I was surprised to find that I like doing research and figuring out the right questions to ask more than I like being the subject of the interview. Seeing someone realize something they hadn't known before because of a question I asked is the best. That's awesome. Number 5, and I'll get this right this time. Number 5 is women business owners are passionate about the industry. She says, I already knew this in theory, but the show has driven this home. Women care about contributing to the industry and making it better for everyone. They spend a lot of time and thought on what is the best way to do that. That is great. That is fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Please make sure you get over and check out Women and Business podcast. I don't have a link handy. Christine, if you've got one handy, please put that in the comments and we'll get that out there. It will also be in your show notes here of the Two Regular Guys show. So this is fantastic. Thank you, Christine. All right. Let me see what she has to say. Love doing the podcast and I've learned so much. Thanks for sharing this 5 things, guys. Yeah, you're very welcome, Christine. Thanks for sharing it with us. All right, Terry. Well, let's wrap this up with what you've got coming up, and then we'll get out of here.
Okay, I'll be quick. March 25th, I'll be presenting a DAX online seminar. What do I really need to buy when I start a screen printing business? My complete screen printing business course at Workhorse Products will be April 17th and 18th. The same class at Atlas Screen Supply in Chicago is May 22nd, 23rd. Those classes are filling up, so if you're interested in getting a hands-on class, do it soon, and you can find that at terrycombs.com.
Excellent. Well, I will be brief as well. So in 1 minute, Eric and I will be doing the half, and it's happening if you'll go to liveosg.com, or you can go to facebook.com/our success group pro, or you can also look up ericcampbell.com and find his YouTube channel, or you can find him on Facebook at Eric Campbell. So anywhere you can find Eric or I, you should be able to find this show. 30 minutes, no exceptions. So we'll see how this goes since it's almost going to happen here. So we'll leave it with that. And Terry, I think we've done all the damage we can do for one day. Thanks again to Scott Ritter for his time. And make sure you check out what's happening over at DAXShow.com and go to DAXShow.com/forms, FORMS.zip to get those free tools from Scott. So thanks very much, Scott.
Yeah, and we want to thank our show producer, Eric Campbell, for keeping us up and running and for joining us live on the show today.
There he is. All right. Well, next week, Terry, we will be joined by Ray Weiss from Printing United and Jim Raffle from Color Casters and Color Metrics Technology. And we're going to be talking color management for DTG and sublimation. So I'm really excited about bringing those guys on. And so stay tuned, 10 o'clock center of the universe time next Friday. Join us.
All right. Until then, I'm Terry Combs. He's Aaron Montgomery.
And we are the Two Regular Guys.
Here we go. We're out.
Awesome.
Thank you for listening to Two Regular Guys. Check out our website at tworegularguys.com. That's the number 2, regularguys.com. You can also interact with us over at our Facebook page, facebook.com/tworegularguys, or send us a tweet, twitter.com/tworegularguys. And we have a YouTube page. You can find all that from our website, tworegularguys.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to spending some time with you again next week.